Today I will be talking about this transaction fee mechanism, which is some mechanism happen on blockchain. Just before we start, may I get a sense of how familiar is our audience with blockchain basics or what it is?
I think very familiar.
Oh, cool. Okay, great. This is based on a joint work with my students, Forrest Young and Ellen Park. Specifically, I will talk about two sets of desired properties of this transaction fee mechanism, incentive compatibility and rational harm proofness. Okay, let's get started. So the rest of this talk will be organized as follows. I will first briefly introduce what is transaction fee mechanism, or TFM for short. Then we will talk about what makes a good transaction fee mechanism. What are the desired properties? As I mentioned, there are two sets of desired properties. What are they? Why do we want them? And then we will move into our contribution in this work. We define this rational harm proofness and give a characterization of the feasibility and impossibility under this desired property. Great. So what is transaction fee mechanism? Since we're pretty familiar with blockchain, I'll just keep some part of it. So we know that blockchain consists of a chain of blocks. Each block consists of an ordered list of transactions, and each block is controlled by its creator. And in this talk, I'm just going to call them miners, although in Ethereum, there's also called validators. So this miner creates this block and it has dictatorial control over this block content, what I'm going to put in my block. So let's zoom out in this single block. Forget about all the other miners in the world. There are many users who have some transactions they want to get executed on blockchain. Okay. For example, maybe Aviv wants to transfer to kill one Bitcoin out of no reason. Or maybe I detect an arbitrage opportunity, so I want to submit a transaction, get confirmed in the blockchain, gets executed so I can extract a profit. There are many users, okay? They each have some transactions, but now the block size is limited. Okay? It can only contain that many transactions, so users will have to compete with each other to get their transactions confirmed in the block. So in this case, we can basically view it as an auction where the miner acts as the auctioneer and it sells the space in the block to the users. Okay. The users who want to have their transactions confirmed in the block, they bid to get a slot in the block. So now whenever users submit a transaction, they also submit a bid associated with that transaction, indicating how much I'm willing to pay. So once my transaction gets confirmed, I get a space in the block, I will need to pay for using that space. Okay. And this payment is called the transaction fee. Okay. So here we're assuming that each user has a true value. So each user has, there is a maximum amount that a user is willing to pay to get my transaction confirmed in the block. So in this case, okay, the miner needs to implement a so-called transaction fee mechanism. Okay. It decides which bids to confirm, how much they pay, and how much the miner gets. As a heads up in the blockchain context, it is not necessarily the case that all payments go to the miner. Some payments or even all of the payment can be burned. Okay. And since this mechanism determines the transaction fee, it is called the transaction fee mechanism. So now you might wonder, well, this sounds like something that happened in the really base layer. As a user, why should I care about it? Okay. Because as a user, your transactions, maybe your arbitrage transactions, your liquidation bids, they have to first go through this fee market, go through this auction to get a space in the block. They have to first be confirmed before they can be executed or settled. And we all know that timing matters for financial markets. So as a user, you do want to have a good estimation of the transaction fee so you can get confirmed in the block as timely as possible. You don't want to miss the opportunity just because you underestimate the transaction fee market and fail this block space auction. In fact, in the so-called blockchain Black Thursday in 2020, there was a high transaction fee spike. So actually, the transaction fee increases a lot during a network congestion. And many liquidation bids, many valuable liquidation bids fail to go through because they underestimate the transaction fee. Whereas there are some low liquidation bid or actually even zero liquidation bid, they get through, they win the collateral auction because they pay a high transaction fee. So we do see that, well, if with a bad transaction fee mechanism, if the user does not have a good estimation of the transaction fee, they can face execution risk and financial loss. So that's why you should care about it, and that's why we want a good transaction fee mechanism. Any question up to this point about this setup, why this is an auction?
Can you explain again how exactly this exploit works?
This exploit?
Yeah.
Sure. So by that time, there are many. So what happened was that Ethereum prices suddenly drops. So there are many transactions coming through. They all want to get confirmed. And during this network congestion, the transaction fee actually increases a lot. And then there is some, because Ethereum price drops, there is this collateral auction, some to clear some bad debt. And to attend that collateral auction, users need to submit bid to win that collateral. And imagine that someone bid 100 for that collateral auction, but pay 10 transaction fee. Someone bid 10 for the, actually, let's say 20 for the collateral auction, bid 12 for the transaction fee. So this lower bid of 20 for that collateral auction actually win this base auction. This lower value liquidation bid, because it pays a higher transaction fee, it gets into the block space. Whereas the one with which actually bid 100 for the liquidation for the collateral auction failed to get in because it only bid a 10 for transaction fee. So that 10 that bids say with 10 sorry 20 bid 20 for the collateral auction, win that collateral auction. So it wins the collateral and extract profit. Because typically the collateral is way more expensive or way more valuable than the amount of transaction fee one needs to pay.
That helps. Thank you.
Great. Okay,
I'm also curious, like for TFM here, people are
sure.
bidding high is because so like in Ethereum, like the block space is limited and the gap is huge, like not huge, like 12 seconds. Uh, but what if like considering like the other like high performance block, high throughput and high performance blockchain that like they have confirmation in 400 milliseconds and with their short period, like their TPS is super high, like 60,000. Do you think like the TFM will still make sense in this case under the high throughput blockchain?
In fact, yes.
What's the reason behind it?
So even without, the thing is, even without congestion, even if, say, we can accommodate everyone's bid, we still need to determine how much they should pay and how much the creator of this block or those nodes that is taking care of running the consensus needs to they get from running this. That's one, I think that's one answer. Still, they need to get paid because and the second, I would say, although they have high throughput, we don't want to say that we don't want those high throughput blockchains to only work when they can handle more transactions. They can handle more than what those number of transactions from the users. So if they get more popular, they should always be prepared that there will be some period of congestion.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Great. Now let's move to our next experiment. Well, yes, we want a good transaction fee mechanism, but what do we mean by good? Okay, so to understand this, I will actually walk over some bad examples. Okay, we will identify the attacks there or failure mode there, which hints what are the desired properties we want. So the first bad example, first price auction, and this is actually the transaction fee mechanism used in Bitcoin and the one used in Ethereum when the Black Thursday happened. So this might give us a better understanding of why during network congestion, there's this transaction fee spike and leads to a bad estimation. So let's say the block size is K. Okay, so we can confirm at most K number of transactions. First price auction works in a quite natural manner. So here the K highest transactions bids gets confirmed. Okay, each pay their own bid, all payments go to the miner. So if the block size is 2, then bid 9 and bid 7 will be confirmed, each pay their own bid to the miner. That's it. So what's the problem here? Now imagine that I'm this user whose true value is 7. Okay, I'm willing to pay 7 for my transaction, but why should I? I could just bid 6 and pay less. Okay, or I could just bid 5.1 and pay even less. So this causes the problem that in first price auction, I need to estimate what other users are bidding to decide my best strategy. And this typically incurs a lot of effort on the users and result in a terrible fee estimation in the entire Bitcoin ecosystem and a terrible fee estimation during the blockchain Black Thursday in 2020. So the problem of this first price auction is really a bad user experience. They don't have a good estimation about what transaction fee I'm expected to pay, and therefore a good estimation, a good expectation of when my transaction can get executed. So, okay, this hints our first desired property. We want to give users good experience. Okay. We want to make sure that as a user, your best strategy is just to bid your true value. Submit your transaction, bid your true value. That's it. You don't need to care about what other users are bidding. Now, if you have learned something about game theory, or a game theorist now might say, well, we know how to address this. Second price auction. Okay, second price auction provides this guarantee. Users are incentivized to just bid their true value. And this is our second bad example. So in the blockchain context, the second price auction is actually a K plus 1th price auction. Still, the K highest bids will be confirmed, where K is our block size, and they each pay the K plus 1th bid to the miner. Okay. Still, when we have block size 2, 9 and 7 will get confirmed. But in second price, now instead of paying their own bid, they pay the third highest bid, which is 5. So miner gets 10. So game theory tells us in second price auction, user is incentivized to just submit their transaction with their true value. Now what's the problem? On blockchain, the miner who implements the transaction fee mechanism is also a strategic player itself. So it may not follow the protocol honestly. We all know that blockchain is an open system and everyone can just register for many pseudonyms. So a strategic miner can just register a pseudonym, pretend to be a user, inject a fake bid, inject a transaction with a bit 6 that looks indistinguishable from the real ones, and put it in the set. Now these two confirmed bids will now end up paying 6 rather than 5, so the miner can extract more profit at the expense of the users. Or second price auction, actually also this attack can also happen in another mode. Maybe this miner does not want to inject fake bid myself. Okay. What I can do is I'll just reach out to this third highest user. Well, you bid 5, right? Can you just raise your bid to 6? I'm willing to share part of my profit with you. So now this user said, yeah, sure, why not? Okay, I'm going to raise my bid to 6. The two confirmed bids now paid 6, and miner gets 12. And the miner can split its profit with this excluding user. And such kind of miner user coalition is very easy to form on blockchain through binding side contracts, and they can just share their joint profit. So this gives us the second and third desired properties. We see that in second price auction, the miner can gain more profit, get more revenue at the expense of the users, which we do not want to happen. So we want to make sure that the miner is incentivized to implement the transaction fee mechanism honestly. If the mechanism says the miner should do this, then the miner is doing exactly what it is told to do. And the same for miner user coalitions. Even if the miner form a coalition with some users, still they're incentivized to follow the mechanism honestly. So these three desired properties are actually formalized as incentive compatibility. At a high level, among all possible strategies, we want to make sure that the honest behavior specified by the transaction fee mechanism maximizes their utility. Any questions so far? If not, because I'm going to be a little bit formal here. As I mentioned, among possible strategies, honest behavior maximize my utility. Okay. Then what are the strategies? What is the utility? So the strategy space is the following. The user can just strategically bid. For example, I can overbid, I can underbid, as we saw in the earlier example. I don't need to bid my true value. And in fact, because blockchain is an open system, users can also inject fake bids. Okay, not just the miners, users can also do this. Now, the miner can actually just form the block arbitrarily because I control my block. I'm the creator. I decide what goes into my block. And specifically, this miner can inject fake bids, as we saw in the second price auction example. It can also censor honest users' bids. I can pretend that I did not see some honest user's bid, and I can just decide what transactions go into my block. And coalition strategy is just a combination of user strategy and miner strategy. Okay. We can, as a coalition, their strategy is just a combination of each coalition member's strategy. Now, a user's utility equals its true value minus the payment. So true value is the maximum amount I'm willing to pay. So my utility is the difference between my true value and my actual payment if I get confirmed. And if my transaction did not get into the block, I just get utility 0. Okay, nothing changes for me. I don't need to pay anything. My transaction did not get in. And miner's utility is just its revenue. So this is the little bit more formal modeling. These are their strategies and users and miners' utility. Coalition's utility is just the sum of all coalition members' utility. So the three desired properties we had earlier can be is called incentive compatibility, or I might sometimes just write IC for short. So for users, you just submit one transaction, bid your true value. That maximizes your utility. For the miner, you just implement the mechanism honestly, maximizes your utility, and the same for the coalition. So these are the three desired properties for transaction fee mechanism, and actually these the characterization under these three desired properties have been long studied. But now I want you to think, is that all we want? What is the guarantee incentive compatibility provides? It makes sure that the honest behavior specified by the mechanism is in equilibrium. it is a Nash equilibrium. Everyone is incentivized to follow the protocol honestly to maximize their utility. If everyone is profit maximizing. Now what's missing here? So incentive compatibility said that honest behavior maximizes my utility, but it never says that that's the only strategy that maximizes my utility. That is saying there are other strategies that can give me the same utility as in the honest behavior. So from my perspective, I'm indifferent among these possible strategies with the same utility, but maybe now I can harm others. So let me again show you an example, another failure mode in second price auction. Okay. So you see that second price auction fails in so many ways that I'm not aware of any blockchain that uses second price auction as transaction fee mechanism. So we know that second price auction incentivizes users to behave honestly, right? I just submit my transaction, bid my true value that maximizes my utility. Now, again, looking at this user, my bid is 5. I'm not getting into the block. My utility is 0. Since my utility is 0 anyway, but I'm unhappy about these two guys. Okay. I'm pretty jealous. So I just want to make them more unhappy. So instead of bidding 5, I'll just bid 6. My utility is still 0. This strategy does not change my utility, but now the two confirmed bids is harmed because they have to pay more compared to the honest behavior. So that is saying incentive compatibility does not prevent such costless harm. Yes, maybe I cannot do better compared to my honest behavior, but there are some same good strategy as honest behavior where I can just harm others. Maybe if I force them to pay more, they will have less money in their account balance. So in the future, they're less competitive with me. So we captured this property as rational harm proofness. Okay. We want to get rid of these types of attack. On top of incentive compatibility, we also want to make sure that any rational deviations cannot harm others. If you hurt others, you must be hurting yourself. So if you're rational and if you are profit maximizing, then you should not be able to adopt those strategies that harm others. So we formalize this desired property as rational harm proofness, or RHP for short. And as before, we want this rational harm proofness to hold for all 3 types of these strategic rows: user, minor, or minor user coalition. So in fact, these are 2 sets of desired properties, and we have 6 desired properties in total. Any questions so far about these desired properties?
You don't consider any form of any Bayesian sense of equilibrium?
No.
Because like in the previous example, it could be dangerous.
Yes. That's actually a good question. That's one of my future direction at the end.
Cool.
But yes, in this work, we only consider exposed setting. We do not consider Bayesian. Great. Now we've gone a long way to define these 6 desired properties and understand why we need them. A natural question, well, can you have an ideal transaction fee mechanism that achieves all 6 properties? Unfortunately, the answer is no. Even if you only ask for user incentive compatibility and coalition incentive compatibility, In fact, even before we talk about this new desired property of rational harm-proofness, it's already impossible. User IC and collision IC cannot coexist when there is congestion. And in fact, this impossibility hold even in a quite rather strong model where we're guaranteed that the transaction fee mechanism is implemented honestly on top of all received bids. Well, this is quite pessimistic. But since user IC is tightly connected to user experience, okay, now what if we ask, well, forget about collision IC, because we do care about user IC. If they cannot coexist, let's just give up on collision IC. Can we achieve all the remaining ones? Minor incentive compatibility, user incentive compatibility, and all the rational harm-proofness properties. Now, this time the answer is positive, partially. We can achieve that, but in a stronger model. In the stronger model that I just described, where you are guaranteed that the transaction fee mechanism will be implemented honestly. So now we're into the last part, finally, our contribution. So we define this rational harm-proofness and give a complete characterization. As I just promised, we can achieve every desired properties except for collision IC in a stronger model called MPC-assisted model. I will introduce this MPC-assisted model in a few slides. And this mechanism called MPC-assisted model, posted price with random selection, actually achieves all desired properties. And we also showed that this stronger model is necessary. In the plain model, where a single miner controls the creation of this block, in fact, even if you only any transaction fee mechanism that is user IC, miner IC, and collision rational harm-proofness, it must be degraded, meaning that no transactions can be confirmed when there is congestion, when there are more number of transactions waiting to be confirmed compared to the block size. So these are going to be the two main results I'm going to cover in today's talk. I will first introduce what is this strong model called MPC-assisted model and what is this mechanism and intuitively why it achieves all the desired properties. Then if time allows, I do want to walk you over a short proof sketch for a special case for this impossibility because it gives us a good intuition of what exactly is the power of MPC-assisted model that circumvents this impossibility.
Okay, when you let go of user IC, you can get minor IC and collision RHP probably with the first price option, right? And confirm. Okay.
Yes. In fact, we in the paper, we proved a tetrilemma, 3 out of 4. So user incentive compatibility, minor incentive compatibility, collision RHP. And if we also want positive minor revenue, out of these 4 properties, any 3 is achievable, but not all 4 of them. So one corollary of this degrade transaction fee mechanism is that minor revenue must always be 0.
Okay. Cool.
Great. That's a good question. So let me introduce you this strong model. Okay. So MPC here stands for multi-party computation, which is a quite powerful cryptographic primitives. So how does this MPC-assisted model work? Now, instead of having a single miner implementing the mechanism, we're going to have a group of miners together implementing the mechanism. Okay. So what they do here is that they receive all the bids from the users. Now, based on the joint input, they are going to perform some multi-party computation. They're going to run this protocol interactively, talk to each other, and then at the end of this computation, cryptography guarantees that as long as there is one honest miner, at the end of the computation, we either get the correct output of the transaction fee mechanism or the computation fails, and we just get a bot. And whenever there is a bot, we just treat it as the auction fails, and everyone gets zero utility. So that is saying the miners, they're not, as long as they get a positive revenue in the honest execution, they're not incentivized to fail this computation. And, or if you are willing to make a stronger assumption that majority number of these miners are honest, then you're always guaranteed to get the correct output of the transaction fee mechanism. The computation will never abort. So one comment I have here is that this MPC-assisted model does not trivialize miner incentive compatibility, because still a strategic miner can inject fake bids. Pretend to be a user, inject fake bids as an input to this computation, but they cannot censor honest users' bids anymore. Now, with this strong model, let me introduce you this mechanism. Quite simple. It's posted price with random selection. So this mechanism comes with two parameters, posted price R, which is a ticket or limit offer. If you're willing to pay the price, you're eligible. If you're not willing to pay this price, you just walk away. And there is a revenue parameter epsilon, which is upper bounded by the posted price. So this revenue parameter controls how much the miner gets. Now, these two parameters are determined by the protocol, okay, meaning that they are determined from the blockchain history. They're not determined by the miners. So now in this mechanism, again, let's say K is the block size. Okay. All bids at least the posted price are treated eligible. And we just randomly pick K eligible bids to confirm. Okay. Each confirmed bids pays R, and the miner jointly gets epsilon per confirmed bid. So this is why we have this revenue parameter. And all the miners running that multi-party computation is going to split this joint revenue. Pretty simple, right? Now let me briefly describe why it achieves all desired properties. For the user, I'm pulling out the user utility again. Okay. So in this mechanism, all that matters for a user is whether I bid above the posted price or below the posted price. That's it. So that's saying if my true value is above the posted price, it doesn't make sense for me to bid something lower than the posted price because then I will never be confirmed. Whereas in the honest case, I actually have a positive chance of getting confirmed. Whereas if my true value is below the posted price, it never makes sense to me to bid something higher than the posted price. Because once I get confirmed, I will need to pay that posted price, which is higher than the maximum amount I'm willing to pay. So again, it doesn't make sense for a user to overbid something higher than the posted price if my true value is below the posted price. Okay. Also, injecting fake bids does not help at all. It will only decrease my probability of getting affirmed for my real transactions. So a user is incentivized to behave honestly. For a miner, sorry, was there a question?
Yeah. If a user injects many bids, wouldn't they sort of increase their, it's like sort of buying multiple lottery tickets? Would they increase the probability of being chosen?
Oh, that's a good question. There is one subtlety here. We do assume that the fake bids brings no true value to the users. So it's not that I'm duplicating my transaction 10 copies, and as long as any copy gets confirmed, I'm happy.
I see.
Yeah, it's like I have a real transaction. I have 9 other dummy transactions. That's the subtlety here. Okay. For the miner, okay. So miner can only inject fake bids. Okay, there's nothing else it can do. If it injects some bids that is not eligible, it's not changing anything. if it inject eligible fake bit, then once that fake bit gets confirmed, this miner will have to pay for that fake bits. Whereas it is only getting a small portion of the revenue out from that posted price. So injecting fake bits will not increase the miner revenue. Rational harm proofness. Okay. Actually, the rational harm proofness rationale here works for all three types of strategic roles. So I'm just going to explain them jointly together. So imagine that. So what type of strategies can harm a user? If a user can be harmed, it must be the case that this user I is eligible. I cannot control the payment that this user pays once it gets confirmed. So if I want to harm this user, all we can do is to decrease its confirmation probability. But this random choosing process is implemented by the multi-party computation. So all we can do to decrease its confirmation probability is to inject fake eligible transactions. But as we just discussed, injecting fake eligible transactions will only decrease my own utility. So I cannot really harm any other honest user without harming myself. So that's it. This simple mechanism achieves all the desired properties we want. Is there a question?
So here the key question here will be how do you set this this value R, right? Because once you post this value R, basically everyone will own. Are they like are the bidders will be able to see this value R before they start bidding?
Yes, this value R is determined purely by blockchain history.
So basically it's following like something like EIP 1559, like how it's decide the transaction fee.
Exactly.
So
You can,
then
I mean, so we only focus on a single block setting, but you can imagine something like EIP 1559 to decide to determine this posted price. But this posted price R is determined at the protocol level.
I see. So then like basically for all the bidders, no matter what's their intention, they will all be only bidding this value R.
In fact, what happens is that you might still want to bid your true value. The reason being that we have a random selection process here.
Yeah, so
So
is
it
the
is not
random
guaranteed that I will get into this block. And once the next block posted price changes.
so are those like non-selected transaction will be staying in the mempool and be selected at the next round?
Yes.
But if we're only considering a single round, like it doesn't make sense for me to bid my true value if it's greater than R, right? Because basically, no matter I bid R or like my true value V, which is greater than R,
Mhm.
my the selection probability for me will always be K over like the total number of transactions because they're
Yes.
indifferent.
Mhm. I would say in a single block setting, yes, in a single block setting, it doesn't make any difference.
Then for the multi-blocks, multi-slot setting, I will still be more willing to initiate a new transaction that's matching the new R instead of like bidding my true value if like the new R will still be smaller than my true value. So basically I can bid multiple slots uh, to basically increase my probability to be included over the multiple slots instead of like sending only one transaction with value V, like true value V staying there, which may be greater than R, but it does not affect the selecting probability at all.
No, I think it's the same. I only need to submit one transaction with my true value.
No, but like so the case
Even
here,
for multi-block setting, because for the next round, again, as I mentioned, it makes no difference. That's the thing. So even if my true value is higher than the next posted price, I will still be confirmed with a positive probability. I don't need to, the strategy you said actually achieves the same effect, but it requires the users to stay online and monitor the posted price.
No.
Whereas, sorry.
No, so the case here will be so basically it's not a duplicated transaction. It will be the
Yes.
same valid transaction but with different values. So if I'm bidding value R at this round, and as the next round I bid like say R plus one. So my selection probability, if the transaction is not included in the previous slot, the next slot I'll be selected considering like if there's a constant of the total number of transaction will be still the same, but the price I'm be paying will be R plus like expected value will be R plus 0.5. But if I'm bidding my true value, which may be greater than this value, then there's no incentive for me to bid that true value, right? Uh,
Even if I bid true value, my expected payment across these two is still R plus 0.5. The probability I'm getting affirmed only depends on the number of eligible transactions. It does not depend on my own bid.
so if the,
Actually, I'm happy
yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
explain this bit more later because it's probably easier with
Yeah,
writing
yeah, yeah.
if we write
Um,
it down.
Sorry, another question like what is this epsilon? Is this like epsilon a fixed parameter that's depending on K and R?
Uh, this epsilon would be a parameter similar to posted price, but it controls how much the miner gets. I will actually explain the role of this epsilon.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. So before we move forward, there's a bit more comment I want to talk about this mechanism, which also relates to John Way's question earlier. So the first comment is that although I define this strong model using very powerful multi-party computation, for this mechanism, we actually only need censorship resistance and trusted randomness. So we do not need a full-fledged expansive multi-party computation for this mechanism to achieve all desired properties. And next, this mechanism is actually not coalition incentive compatible. I may not have time to explain the actual attack, but this revenue parameter epsilon, so why do we introduce this extra parameter? It actually controls how much the coalition gains. In fact, if we treat epsilon to be zero, this goes even closer to EIP 1559. If we treat epsilon to be zero, then this mechanism is incentive compatible if the miner clued with only one user, if there is only one user in the coalition. But when there are more users in the coalition, they might still gain profit by negotiating an optimal bidding strategy based on the users' different true values within that coalition. And importantly, because this mechanism achieves all the five desired properties, what we guarantees is that even if the coalition gains, they're not harming any honest users. So even if the coalition comes up with a better strategy compared to the honest behavior, it is actually a Pareto improvement compared to the honest case. Okay. I guess I might have 10 more minutes. So let me give a very brief proof sketch just with the toy example for the impossibility in the plane model, because this gives an important idea of why censorship resistance is really important to get rid of this impossibility. Okay, so I'm going to show you that any deterministic transaction fee mechanism that is user incentive compatible, miner incentive compatible, and coalition rational harm proofness in the plane model has to be degraded. So I will just explain the idea with k equals to 1. Okay. Again, recall that we're going back to the plane model. So the miner, there's a single miner creating the block, and it can censor user's bid. This is actually the important attack that leads to this impossibility. So if we look at this toy example, okay, let's say this user 2 bit 9, user 1 bit 5. If user 2 is confirmed and pays 4, what can we conclude about user 1? So I claim here that user 1 must also be confirmed. Why is that the case? So if user 1 is not confirmed, which makes sense because our block size is only 1. So this user 1 can just collude with the miner. Now the miner is going to censor user 2's bit. Just pretending that I did not see this one. We're going to have user 1 bit 9. So this user 1 pretty much is impersonate user 2 in the honest case. And they inject a fake bit 5, just pretending to mimic the same input bit vector as in the honest case. Okay, so compared to the honest scenario, there are 2 bits, 1 of 5 and 1 of 9. Same thing here. So miner revenue does not change. But now user 1 is confirmed and it pays 4. So this coalition actually jointly benefit from this strategy, and clearly user 2 is harmed. So this contradicts coalition rational harm proofness. And this is what we call censor then replace attack. So an implication of this toy example is that if this mechanism is coalition rational harm proofness, that's the only property we used in that when we argued that toy example. If for some input bit vector, some bit is confirmed and pays some payment P, then any bit above that payment must also be confirmed. Because if not, then that bit can include the user who submit that non-confirmed bit above the payment can just collude with a miner. Okay, they censor bit BI, and having this colluding user pretend to be BI. The same attack, the same censor, then replace attack as before. Now, with this above payment guarantee, let's imagine that for the sake of contradiction, the impossibility does not hold for k equals to 1. Okay. So there is a case when there is congestion, there are more than 1 bit, but someone is confirmed. For simplicity, I'm just going to use 2 here in the talk. Okay. So let's say B2 is confirmed. Okay. I'm drawing this real number axis here to demonstrate the relative position of B1 and B2. Say B2 is confirmed. Okay. And without loss of generality, we can assume that its payment is strictly less than B2. Now imagine a world where we have 3 users. B1, V, B2, where this V lies between the payment P and B2. Then I'm claiming that V must be confirmed. And by the above payment guarantee we saw earlier, B2 must also be confirmed, because B2 is higher than V, which is higher than its payment. Okay, so why V must be confirmed? Let's say for the sake of contradiction again, if it's not. Now imagine that this is the honest world. We have 2 users, B1 and B2. B2 is confirmed and pays price P. Again, this orange user whose true value is B1 is going to collude with the miner. Okay. For now, they do not censor. They just inject a fake bit V. V is not confirmed, so V should not change miner revenue by miner incentive compatibility. V is not confirmed again, so it should not change it should at least not increase the this orange user's utility. So if B1 was not confirmed before, it is still not confirmed. So injecting this non-confirmed bit V does not change the coalition's joint utility. That said, this strategy should not harm this green user B2. It is honest. By collision rational harm proofness, it should not be harmed. That saying, in the honest case, B2 was confirmed and paid P. Now, after injecting this V, B2 should still be confirmed and pay no more than P. Now, by the above payment guarantee, in this, when there are 3 bids, B1, V, B2, B2 needs to be confirmed, pay no more than P, so V must also be confirmed. And now we reach a contradiction because when the input bit vector is B1, V, B2, both V and B2 should be confirmed, but the block size is only 1. This actually contradicts the block's limit. So what I just showed you is actually one inductive step of the whole proof. And in general, the proof idea is that if we start with some bit of length longer than k and someone is confirmed, then we can inductively build a bit vector wherein each step Vm, at least m bits must be confirmed. So when we go to the k+1 step, we contradict the block space limit. And in every inductive step, what we're doing is actually injecting or like increasing the number of bits by 1. And the new bit lies in the previous new bit, the last new bit, and the maximum of the payment. So we can repeatedly apply the above payment guarantee. So this is the idea, and we do see that the important power of the attack here is the censorship power of the miner. So actually this impossibility, in the paper, we prove this impossibility with an even weaker notion of rational harm proofness. Even if we replace the coalition rational harm proofness to say that any strictly profitable strategy does not harm others, the same impossibility still holds. And in fact, also, the mechanism I showed you, that MPC-assisted random posted price with random selection, it involves randomness, and we prove that randomness is also necessary in the MPC-assisted model. Otherwise, the transaction fee mechanism must be degraded. And we also show that incentive compatibility and rational harm proofness, they're incomparable in both models. None of them imply the other. Great. So just to summarize, we introduced this new notion of rational harm proofness, and it complements incentive compatibility. So on top of incentivizing parties to behave honestly, we provide an additional layer of protection for honest parties against rational deviations. If someone tries to harm you, they must harm themselves. And we also see that cryptography, or specifically the MPC-assisted model, helps circumvent the impossibility in the plain model. So, in the end, some interesting future directions. I do have the Bayesian setting here that was asked earlier. Sorry that I cannot see clearly who we're asking. I assume it's Aviv. So in the current version of the definition, we say that the coalition, if a strategic part player, if they harm you, they must harm themselves. But what if they're interested in harming you a lot by harming myself a little bit? How do we quantify those type of attacks? And how do we get a characterization of the transaction fee mechanism under this type of incentives? And second, does Bayesian help circumvent this impossibility? Okay. Currently, we're assuming everything is exposed. Okay, you see all other users' bids before you make your own move. Does Bayesian setting help circumvent this impossibility? And third, although we started this rational harm proofness specifically to transaction fee mechanism, I think it captures a broader type of protection for honest parties, and we should be able to extend it to other mechanism designs as well. So that completes my talk. Thank you. And here's the apron link and any question.